So you've got this incredible design system, right? The very DNA of your product. But how does anyone actually read that DNA? That's where documentation comes in. And let's be super clear, this is not some optional extra. It's the living, breathing guide that makes the entire system actually click for everyone involved. And you really can't underestimate how high the stakes are. I mean, this quote from Sarah Drasner just hits so hard because it's brutally honest. The folks that bounce due to bad docs aren't telling you. They're just leaving. Wow. Think about that for a second. Bad documentation isn't just a minor inconvenience, it's a silent killer for your system's adoption. People get frustrated, they give up, and then they just leave.
Okay, so we've got to completely shift our mindset here. Let's just ditch this old idea of documentation as some dusty, static manual you write once and then it sits on a shelf forever. No way. Instead, think of it as the living blueprint for your entire product. It's dynamic, it guides how everything gets built, and it grows and evolves right along with the product itself.
So, here's our game plan to understand this blueprint. First, we'll talk about making docs for everyone. Then, we'll dig into the system's foundation. After that, we'll see how to put all the pieces together. And we'll wrap up with how to keep it all a living, breathing document. All right, first up, docs for everyone. Look, you can have the most amazing blueprint in the world, but if the architect, the engineer, and the project manager can't all make sense of it, you're not building anything, right? It's this exact same deal with your design system docs. They have to work for everybody who uses them. So what does that actually look like? Well, a designer's coming in looking for visual guidance. They need to see the do's and don'ts, the rules of thumb. A developer, on the other hand, needs the hardcore technical stuff. Give them the code snippets, the prop tables, which are really just cheat sheets for all the components' options. And then you have someone like a product manager. They're not digging into code. They just want to know, hey, what's the status of this component? Can my team use it yet? See? It's the same system, but everyone's looking at it through their own unique lens. Okay, now let's dig a bit deeper into that blueprint. We're talking about the system's foundation. These are the core architectural plans, the absolute ground rules that create a shared language and make sure everything looks and feels consistent no matter what. Now, this includes all the stuff you'd probably expect, like your color palettes, your type scales, your spacing rules. But, and this is so important, it's also about the language we use, the naming conventions, the vocabulary, making sure we're all calling the same thing, well, the same thing. And at the very heart of that shared language, that's where you'll find design tokens. So what in the world are design tokens? Think of them as the tiny, fundamental atoms of your design. They're just names for your design decisions. So instead of some random hex code, you give that color a name. Instead of a random pixel value for spacing, you give it a name. And by doing that, you create a single source of truth that works perfectly for both designers and their tools and developers in the code. And here's the magic part. The name of the token is the documentation. It's self-documenting. A really well-named token doesn't just hold a value, it tells you a story. You're not left guessing what some random hex code like hashtag B90000 is for. The name tells you exactly what it is. It's a color for a feedback background, specifically for an error state. And this is where the real power of a structured naming system comes in. When you break this one down, you can see every single decision all baked right into the name. You've got the system, ESDS, the category, color, the concept it's used for, feedback, the property, background, and the state or variant, error. See that? It's not just a variable name, it's a tiny, self-contained instruction manual. Okay, so we've got our foundations, our ground rules. Now for the fun part, putting all the pieces together. This is where we get into the assembly instructions, the docs for your components and patterns, the actual building blocks that teams use every single day. The goal here is simple. It's all about connecting the abstract to the practical. I mean, it's one thing to just show a picture of a button. It's a whole other thing to explain how and when to use that button to solve a real user's problem. That's what great documentation does. It guides people from a simple library of parts to a cohesive, finished product. So what absolutely has to be there for every component? Well, you need a clear description of what it is and when to use it. You must have visual examples, especially those super helpful do's and don'ts. For developers, you need code snippets and those prop tables. And this one's non-negotiable, accessibility notes, always. Finally, a clear status so everyone knows if it's ready to go, in progress, or being retired.
Let's look at a classic example here, because the do's and don'ts format is just so effective. It is so direct. On the left, a crystal clear rule. Use the primary button for the main call to action on a page. On the right, an equally clear warning. Do not use multiple primary buttons on the same screen. It's that simple guidance that prevents misuse and ensures consistency.
And that brings us to our final and honestly, maybe the most important section of all. A blueprint is totally useless if it doesn't reflect what's actually being built. Your documentation has to be a living, breathing thing that evolves over time. Because here's the hard truth. An outdated design system is actually worse than having no system at all. It just erodes trust. The second a developer or designer finds that the docs are wrong, they'll stop using it, and maybe the whole system. Maintenance isn't optional. It's the process that keeps everything trustworthy and relevant. So how do we keep this blueprint alive? Well, you need a few key things in place. First, a clear contribution model, so people know how to suggest changes. You also need really easy feedback channels. Don't make people file a complicated ticket just to point out a typo. A good onboarding guide is huge for new team members. And hey, just as important as adding things, you need a clear process for deprecating and removing old components. At the end of the day, documentation improves through use. It's not about achieving perfection on day one. The best approach is always iterative. You got to put it out there, see how people use it, actively listen to their feedback, and then be ready to adapt and improve it quickly. It's a continuous loop of learning and refinement. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Is your documentation a barrier that creates confusion and silos? Or is it a bridge, a shared language and a trusted guide that truly connects your team, your system, and ultimately your product?